Hi, everyone. This is Colette Marie Stefan. You're listening to The Truth is Funny on Transformation Talk Radio, and we're also live on Facebook. I haven't been making much of a presence in social media lately because I've been so busy at home, which I'll tell you about in a little bit here. We are taking calls today, 1-800-930-2819. I am most definitely in the mood for making some shift happen. And so when I was like, okay, I want some shift to happen. Who am I going to call? And I thought, I'm going to call my co-host, Karen Betten, and I'm going to bring her on the show. She's been, on The Truth is Funny. We're going to talk about that a little bit and how we met, maybe. And I'm just going to bring her right on here, and I'm just thrilled because I never get to talk to you, Karen.
Thanks so much for having me on, Colette. I can't help but as soon as you say who you're going to call, Ghostbusters. I mean, went right away to that. But then you said me. Very confusing. Who's what? Me? No, Ghostbusters. That's who you always call. That's what I was taught. I was raised in the 80s.
Well,
Thanks so much.
It's just so such a pleasure to connect with you. Like I met Karen. I was trying to figure out, like, Karen, when did we meet?
I feel like Philadelphia
Philadelphia.
at the conference. What year exactly that was, I don't know.
A bazillion years ago.
The first time we met, I think it was just in passing in Philadelphia, and then we connected
In California?
Yeah, in LA maybe is when, but
Yeah.
but there was a period of time. Yeah, definitely LA is when we connected big time, and I started to work with you through a troubling time in my own life. I don't even like the word troubling, right?
Yeah.
As you do this
I know,
work, right? Troubling is as inspiring and expansive as amazing. So I don't want to give the impression that it was in any way other than awesome and such a great experience to work with you and start to see new perspectives in my own life and to be down and out with what I was experiencing and then talk to you on the phone and have it completely change and shift in a way that I had never had any reference to understand that it was possible without surgery, talking about my life, endlessly and vomiting all my problems, and it would shift and move out. And as your intro says, have fun and laughter with it. So it continued to working with you pretty regularly over that time period of my life. I had had a miscarriage, that I was continually reminded that our possibility of creating change has infinite potential far beyond what I had been conditioned to believe was the only way it could happen. So number one, thank you to you, because that time period in my life was really the beginning time of regularly experiencing that, right? Like, it's one thing to have an experience and then to, we walk away and we'll get busy in our lives and we'll go about the same sort of coping strategies we've always used, right? Whether we call the psychiatrist or we take a medication or we get surgery, whatever it might be. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. But you and I worked regularly together, and I was continually creating an imprint of tangible experiences that said there's another way that's just as valuable, even though the world doesn't necessarily know about it, to create change. And gosh darn it, if it's not fun too, to do it.
I don't want to do it if it's not fun. See, this is how I've always been. I'm not a half cooked person. I was going to say, I don't know if you're allowed to use the word ASS on the air.
Half baked.
Whatever, right? So I've never been that way. Like, I don't want to sort of live. I've already experienced freedom, so I want more freedom. And freedom is discipline of the mind. That's the kicker.
It's so true, right? I mean, we're all sort of unknowingly utilize just our mind for conflict resolution. And as amazing as the mind is, it can also be extremely limiting when it's our sole source that we engage for creating change in our lives.
Well, you and I, like, what I like is that you and I both have diligently gone after knowledge. And I think when I asked you if you would co-host my show, I wouldn't just ask anyone. I needed to ask someone that could handle the pressure. And look how beautifully, here you are in New York with all these
There
children.
I am.
Well, it used to be New York. um, now, whatever it is another version of New York. And so I feel that at this time, I was like, okay, there's so much fear out there. And I had such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience in the last month in particular. And I had such a horrible, horrible, horrible experience. And so that's why I wasn't on social media, because I was like, okay, I don't want to say anything that would create any more fear. And I also don't want to say anything that is not going to benefit people. And I was very busy. So I'm just going to share with people a little bit what happened with me this week, just to explain, if you haven't heard from me, what was going on. And then I want you to tell us then what, um, your background and why. I have total confidence in you that you can handle a lot of pressure. And we're going to get back to that. So I just want to explain to people the energetic blocks that we have. Once we identify them and we're aware of them, then we can eliminate them, and we can choose different, and we can choose to do things differently. And some people would say it's better or it's not better, whatever. We're just going to like allow everybody to have the space on this show right now to allow themselves to express themselves, like as a divine being, okay, as infinite potential, 100% infinite potential, with no judgment in that vessel. And so to get to that potential, you have to take some risks. And so energy work isn't about a magic pill that you take and then, oh, everything just goes all hunky dory after that. Like, a month ago, everything was all hunky dory. And I wasn't really like, I mean, I was having a real challenge. It's challenging going through this for everybody. And so, putting all of this aside and just everyday, daily routine, regular life. I'm writing, I'm working on the last painting now. I can't stop. And I love when that happens. Like, it's the last painting of 64 that I've been painting for 13 years. And all this information is coming in and I'm shifting a lot. And I'm so happy because my daughter just got a big promotion at work and she's so happy. And then I get the phone call that she was injured at work in this freak accident, which I've talked about on the previous shows, but people want to know, how is she doing? Well, it was her birthday yesterday. And she's surrounded by a lot of love and friends. And she got the cast off, and they're very happy with the progress she's making. She had to have surgery on her left arm, and she's really looking forward to going back to work. They're treating her really well. I want to thank all of you, all of you. I've never been more grateful to be able to say happy birthday to my baby because she protected me. She didn't let me know until after she got to the hospital and she knew she was going to live because it was a freak accident, but like it was so close to her artery that, we don't even need to go there. I don't even want to put like that fear out there, but it was like such a hysterical feeling. And I got myself calm immediately, but the tears wouldn't stop. And I just kept on crying and correcting. And so she's doing really well. And so thank you for that. And then on August 3rd, I all of a sudden this little being dropped out of a tree, a little baby squirrel, and I came across it and it was crying for its mama. And so for like almost a whole week, every 2 hours I was feeding it. And I have experience in raising small animals, and I've had a bazillion and owned a dog boutique in that. And I knew it was going to require a lot, but I didn't realize until about 2 or 3 hours in, when the mom didn't come for it, that this little being was sent to me. This is a gift for me because I stopped and took the time. And so, I'm taking a face yoga course. And so that little squirrel and I studied together. I had to get over my aversion to rodents and to having, them by my heart. but it had no hair. And so I'd hold it and study. And I got very, very attached and named her on the third day. And unfortunately, she didn't make it. She was really, really doing so well. And I was just preparing to phone the squirrel sanctuary and arrange to take her out there this week. And I was just waiting for Amazon delivered the squirrel food, and I'm going to send that out to them instead. I can't even talk about it, but I just wanted to let you know I'll talk about it next week on my show. So that's kind of like, I had such a challenging week because I watched this little being struggle to live, just, and then put all her faith in me. And I thought, and I really want to give a really huge shout out to my sister. I don't usually mention my family, but my baby sister tomorrow is serving her last shift as a nurse in the neonatal unit for over 30 years.
Mm.
And I knew when that little squirrel had that thing and she climbed the peak of the stuffy toy. It was a chipmunk and was squirreling. She was so happy. I was thinking, oh my God, I got to get a different container. She's so healthy. It's time to take her out to the squirrel farm. And she was gone within hours. And my sister had told me that preemie babies do that. And I think, how did she do that for 30 some years with people's babies? So a big, big kudos to you, my baby sister. Can we skip the break, Zach? Okay. Because like this brings me to Karen here. And Karen, I really want you to share your wealth of experience with people regarding like your background, because wow, like I just find you to be one of the most amazing, intelligent, and what I love about you is even though you're way more intelligent than most people, you don't act like you are. Like you don't talk down to people. You tell people how it is, and you find ways to do it in a very beautiful way. So welcome to the show. And you'll be on next week on your show. And tell us about yourself. Like really tell us. Like
So I was a little sister for a long, no, just kidding. I mean, I really think a big part of who and what I am was being raised around all men for, most of my life. And I was always completely amazed with the human body and wanted to study it. I was not that great in school. I just got by through high school. I did the minimal amount I needed for them to say, yes, you can go to the next grade. I applied to college and I filled out a form and went to Rutgers. And then somewhere at Rutgers around the end, and I got into the nursing school. So, and I got a scholarship to it, not a full scholarship, but a partial scholarship, which I was paying for 50% of my education. My parents were paying for the other. And that meant that I needed to pay less, possibly. I wasn't sure I still don't even know how that worked out. But anyway, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I want to be a nurse. It was like, oh, they gave me a scholarship to the nursing school. I'm waitlisted at the regular school. I guess I'll go here. My point being is we don't always, we're not always actively participating in our future. Anyway, lo and behold.
If we're really supposed to do something, the universe finds a way to make us do it. And I'll talk about that.
Conspires, right? I love that. The universe conspires, right? To get you right. Yeah.
In the most beautiful way. Like, think about it, Karen. What is the chances of you and I meeting? We had the opportunity. We've only met once, probably in a decade since we first met.
I know.
Or twice. And yet, if I need a good friend, I know who I can call. And see, isn't that amazing? And we might go months and months and months and months without speaking to each other, but I can feel you through the ethers. So your family, like your grandfather, wasn't it? Was it on your dad's side? Was an Olympic athlete.
My mom's side.
On your mom's side. And was he what was he doing?
He was an alternate in the Olympics. I don't know exactly which year, around the 1900s. He was born in 1900, so I'm guessing it was, whatever. I don't know it by heart. But yeah, he was an alternate for the Olympics. He was a runner. He was a phenomenal runner. back in the days when you won and you got actual gold medals and actual silver medals. And but life was different back then. He had a full scholarship to the University of Penn, and his dad had died, and his mom told him he needed to be at home to help take care of the family and his younger brother, so he didn't go. Which is
That
interesting
was
because I married a guy that went to University of Penn and didn't actually put those two things, whether they have
you know,
significance or not.
that's what I'm talking about. This is what I've noticed is for a lot of people right now, because at the moment that that little squirrel took her last breath and I was holding her, I got an email from a long-standing client, and she said, "My dad just died right now. What do I do?" All the way from Germany, exactly in the same second. And I was like, "Okay, I know what to do. Get neutral."
Yeah, yeah.
And so you were when I met you, like you were already on this journey, but
Well, I
you
was breaking out when I met you. I was breaking out. I've been in the medical system, surgical trauma, ICU nurse,
okay,
surgical
so tell us
specialties nurse
about that
practitioner.
because you and I talked before the show, and and you and I both agree that we want to respect everybody here and everybody listening in the audience, and we want to make sure that we're not thinking that anyone we would ever want to insult anyone or force our opinion on anyone or anything else. But I've noticed that you have been voicing some scientific data and posting that on social media, and I've looked into it, and no, and it's valid scientific peer reviewed papers. And I've also noticed that you've received some negative feedback regarding speaking about scientific peer reviewed papers. And that's when I felt like, okay, I need to speak up here because I like science and I love science because it explains for me why things work the way they do. And that's why I, years ago, decided to go and study with the Resonance Project Foundation. Back then, that's what it was called, because I wanted to understand science and I wasn't very good at it in school. And so you have like so much background in the medical field. And so if you didn't have that background and you were co-hosting my radio show and you said, and I saw you were posting these things, and I said to you, hey, B, like, do you know what you're talking about? But I go and I look, I checked, make sure I checked that these are peer reviewed scientific papers that you're being criticized for sharing. And so that's kind of where I draw the line because you're tell people your background. Like, okay, so you decided, okay, I may as well, while I'm waiting, go and educate myself as a nurse. And how many years were you a nurse then for?
Geez, I feel like I'm still a nurse. I don't think it's over. I don't think you ever. I still have my NP certification and my RN certification. So it's just a different iteration. I'm no longer in the acute care setting. So I was in a surgical trauma ICU, which I would say was really the breeding ground, if you will, for me becoming aware of the power of intuition and gut sense and non-scientific uh, sensations and feelings that drive actions and often lead to ununderstood success, right? Like, we bring in someone in with a gunshot wound that had no reason to live.
Yeah.
Medically, there was no reason for that person to make it. And you do some different things. And we always worked as a team. I worked at University of Penn, and I just loved that feeling. And they would make it. Conversely, someone else that would come in, and by all intents and purposes, there'd be no reason for them to not make it out of the hospital from a medical standpoint, and they would. I'm sorry, and they wouldn't, right? So it was this constant challenge of this is what the science says, and this is what actual human expression is, which is so much more diverse.
And how many years did you work in like, because I know like you worked as a nurse for how many years?
Let's see. So 90, what did I don't know. 90, I graduated college in 93. So I would say 94. And then I worked until about 2002 in the acute setting. So you count that up. Go ahead, you do the math. How many years is that?
That's a long time. Like about 8 years, 9 years, 10, a
Yeah,
decade.
in the active
Yeah,
phase, right?
in
So
in the acute care.
yeah, it was surgical trauma floor and then surgical trauma ICU. Then I got my master's because I wanted to work in the ICU, but whoops, I fell in love. Darn it. And that guy got a job in New York. And when you're a nurse, you can get a job anywhere. So I had to up and leave what my dream was to work as a nurse practitioner. And mainly my idea was I wanted to be the liaison that tied together all the categorical separations that medicine did, right? Meaning I wanted to be the one that got the nephrologist to talk to the general practitioner, to talk to the trauma surgeon, to talk to the psychiatrist, so we could all be on the same page. Because I was
Oh my
so
goodness.
frustrated
Yeah.
with the segregation of care and
Mhm.
them just looking at one organ. Little did I know at that time that my definition of holistic would change dramatically as I started to explore the concept of quantum physics. But that wouldn't happen for years later. But that was my original initiation to go back and become an acute care nurse practitioner, was to have a title that gave me authority to blend together the many different facets that were broken up of the individual body. And those experts were true experts, but they were experts with almost like a myopic view, right? They were experts of the heart, but did they understand how the heart integrated with the kidney, which then integrated with a fear, which then integrated with a memory, right? Or with an
Oh,
ancestral belief or a cultural belief.
which is so insane because, um, see, when I first met you, there was a bunch of us that were just raw into this. And we were like I remember looking at you and thinking, now that is an intelligent woman. And I would go out of my way to sit and know because I was really interested in anatomy and that. So would you say that working in New York,
Yeah.
in
And Philadelphia.
triage basically in New York as a nurse that faces people every day who are in a life and death situation. You did that for a decade. And then what did you do?
And
But
then
you didn't just do that. You also raised how many children had and raised how many
Well, what
children?
ended up happening was at the convergence point that I had been working as a nurse practitioner um, for a colon and rectal surgeon at Columbia Presbyterian. Um, a huge subset of our population who had had surgery for colon cancers were coming back with metastasis. And I literally felt the wind come out of my sails as far as I started to question in a very deep way that I would choose the path that I was purporting to my clients if I was faced with the same diagnosis. And I really, really had a, a struggle with those two. How could I stand behind and state that this is what I thought someone should do when in my heart of hearts I was growing with an emergence of believing and feeling that it would not be what supported me on a deep level.
Mhm.
And then 9/11 happened, right? Which,
Oh,
hard,
yeah,
and I lived in New York City. So there
yeah.
was this, and I had a year-old child, right? Which when motherhood changes you,
Oh,
having the birth of
yeah.
my daughter
I
changed me, empowers you in a way that's like,
I can stay calm through anything, but you I look into like my baby's eyes and I'm like, I can't, but like when I have to, I can correct myself in seconds to make sure they live. But then the after effects of that come in. And
yeah,
it's like an adrenaline rush, like someone like you must like at some point when you were working in that field and you were at the hospital and you were dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. And then you had to go home and raise children and be like a mummy, and see all these horrendous things. and then see everything that could happen to your children.
Yeah, yeah. There was
That
a
is the number
what do
one.
they call that? A come to Jesus moment where like the anxiety was driving me, my
Yeah.
inability to integrate it. But
And
I
so,
will also say that, in childbirth, you talk about the things that you're drawn to experience. Somewhere in there, I started having early contractions when I was walking around 27 weeks with my eldest. And I started, that was literally the birth of the internet. That's how bloody old I am, right? Like that was really when the internet became something you would actually check out to research. And I was learning about all these natural methods, the Bradley method, and all of these things that you could use nutrition to help settle down early contractions. And I was kind of like, how come my OBGYN doesn't know anything about this? And meanwhile, my OBGYN was my colleague, right? I worked with her in the hospital. So, I was in it, and it began. So anyway, I was drawn to try to have a natural birth with my daughter. And the surgeon I worked with, who I loved him, and he had a heart of gold. And I will never forget, he so cared about his patients. And that was something we shared and we connected with later on. He was so hurt when I left, but the he couldn't understand that I wanted to experience pain. And he was like, why would you ever, that's so stupid, want to experience the pain of childbirth? Just get medicated so you don't. I couldn't articulate it at that time. At that time, I was like, I don't know. It's just something. And
hey,
to
so
think,
when we come back, we'll talk about it. But like, you know what it's like when you're the host, you got to cut people off.
oh, totally. And I love that I don't have
So,
to.
this is Colette Marie Stefan. You're listening to The Truth is Funny. I've got my co-host on the show, Karen Betten. And we're like, it's just so good to have you on the show and talk to you. When we come back, we're going to talk some more about this. And we're also here to shift for you if you would like, 1-800-930-2819. And we're also live on Facebook to the community out there. We'll be right back. This is Colette. You're listening to The Truth is Funny on Transformation Talk Radio. And I'm arguing with my guest because she's also my co-host. And we're like, whose show is it again?
I just almost found myself trying to go to the introduction. I'm like, no, I'm the guest. I don't have to say anything. Ooh.
I did that with Pat too. So before the break, we were talking, and we have a caller. So we're going to take the caller right away. But before the break, this is something fundamental that I really wanted to talk to you about, because you worked in the hospital and you've seen it, right? And so people will go to all sorts of lengths. Like you said, like the doctor could not understand, why would anyone who doesn't have to feel that pain want to give birth to a child? Because giving birth to a child is a beautiful experience that is granted to very few people on the planet. If you think about it, like half of the people can't even do it. Was this a male that asked you this?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because like if he was like, say, given a gift that he could use, that he could actually carry a baby and then take it to fruition and have that feeling, because no one can understand what that's like unless you just can't even imagine. You just can't. Like
I wouldn't even have imagined 3 months before I made the decision that I wanted to experience home birth, that would be something, not home birth, that's what I did with my next two children, but that I wanted to experience natural birth at that time.
Yeah.
Because it really contradicts so much that initiated in the 80s, in the 90s, which was, that's all hospitals were developing their pain management teams to make sure nobody ever experienced
pain anymore. But the problem with this is what I find with my clients, and then we'll take this caller who's been patient, just we'll get to you here. But this is kind of fundamental, because if people are going to be so afraid of pain and they assume that pain is a bad thing, then how is your body going to tell you, hey, I got an issue here? Because
let's pay attention.
Yeah. And so so if you consider that your body is just talking to you, and I had a client yesterday that's been on, like 5 medications for years, right? And wants to and this is the thing, is that this person can't even remember what it was like to have the original pain. how bad that is, because now that this person's been on for like almost half a decade on 5 different medications that create other symptoms in the body, he spends more time juggling the timing of taking those so that he can get through the day and make sure he provides for his family. It takes up a lot of people's time when they are managing pain in this way. And so avoiding anything, what happens? Bang, it has to, like we fear something, we draw it to us. Why is that? Because we're putting our energy, we're pouring it into that. And so that's kind of like with pain, we can use pain to tell us what's really going on. And in my experience, pain is 95% of the time, more than 99% of the time, pain is non-physical at root cause. And if you get to that root cause, like I literally, like when I did my website 3 years ago, Pat went through the website, and she identified 50 of my testimonials and categorized them in like something like 30 categories, because that's how many testimonials I have about people who have shifted out of illness and health. And
not by doing surgery, right? You don't do surgery, do you?
No, God, no. I'm not a doctor. I'm only for entertainment. Seriously.
And you don't prescribe pills. And you don't do psychological therapy or talk therapy, right? Like, because
none of that.
But that's what most of us, what I was left to believe were the only ways to create change. And you don't do any of that. And yet you have all these testimonials.
No, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm an artist. I see people.
Better yet, you don't have any title, perhaps.
No, not really.
To me, in my stage in life, is actually what I'm more attracted to, because it's you're connected to your truth, and through that truth, you mirror and amplify other people's truths for them.
Yes, but the thing is that if you are educated, the more educated that you are, like you are. People assume, like, just because if they got educated and they're not using necessarily that education for what they thought they were going to use that education for. Like, I totally got more educated in the last week from a little baby squirrel who is fighting to live than I got educated in any school I've been in. I learned more about myself. I learned more about my heart. I learned more from a little teeny weeny, probably only 2.5-week-old naked baby squirrel than I've learned from some of the most intelligent people I've ever met. And that was because she touched my heart. So we're going to take the caller, Zach, because she's been patiently waiting, and let's see if we can do some heart touching now.
All right. We have Trish from British Columbia. Trish, you're live on The Truth is Funny.
Hey, Trish.
Hi, Trish.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Hi, Trish. You're live
For
on
some
The Truth is
reason, I
Funny.
can't hear you.
Can you hear us now?
Hello?
Hi.
I can't hear you guys.
Okay.
This is the classic example of a disconnect.
Yes. Do you want to let Zach know what you want to work on, and then we'll see Zach I don't know why she can't hear us, but if you tell Zach, then he can figure out what's going on here.
Sounds good. I'll take her on the other line and relay it to you.
Okay, thank you so much. So yeah, when this sort of thing happens.
Wait, I just want to back up. I think this is exactly what we were talking about, right? Like if the body is giving you sensations and feelings, yet we're indoctrinated to disconnect from them rather than whatever other word we might do it, maybe that's an additional option that's just as wise. And here you were given an experience of a squirrel that everything in your mind said, I don't have time for this. I'm busy with all these other things. But then your heart spoke really loud and said, don't walk away.
There's no way I could walk away from a baby crying from its mama. Like I can walk away from adults being stupid, but I can't walk away from a baby crying like that. I just, no. And I don't ever want to be that type of person. that could say, well, my day's too busy. And like, I'm the kind of person that when I gave I realized that when I read up, like I have this baby in one hand and I'm online looking up baby squirrels, what to do, Pedialyte. Okay, I don't have any Pedialyte, but I have bamboo salt. I have an eyedropper in my essential oil. I'll clean that out really good, and then I'll mix some raw honey and ice cream together. And then I'll find out, okay, I got to find some baby formula for kittens or puppies, like right quick, because these things have to be fed every 2 hours. And they have to have their little bums wiped, or else they can't go to the bathroom on their own. And so it's a very intense thing. They're very high maintenance. And I knew that. And I knew when I did that this being was depending on me. And so when you go into that mom mode, nothing. Like I've seen moms do some amazing things. Okay, so Trish, okay. Lots of pain, blood clot in the leg. Left. Karen.
Blocking out linear thinking.
Isn't that weird too that she can't get on here and hear us?
So like it's like the intellectual. Okay, what we're talking about, other people's knowledge, right? So perhaps she can connect into amplifying her own wisdom, her own connection to her own wisdom, which is an integral part of the heart, like you said.
Trisha is one of the people that has taken my seminars. And I think like what I'm feeling there is kind of a separation of that too, because we meet and we haven't been allowed to connect. And, we're connecting like this, but I'm not for social distancing because I'm afraid. But I'm busy and I had a squirrel to feed every 2 hours, and I'm taking a course and I have a radio show and I'm making an online program. And I have a lot of people depending on me right now energetically because they're going through some horrible things that I already have gone through. And so this is what we're going to strengthen for Trisha. Blood clots in the leg. We want to strengthen the like what you were saying, like a heart expert looks at the heart. And you need to know how to, like, of course, you need to know how to run a heart, but also to know that the body has to support the heart energetically. And so a lot of people, what's coming up right away with that clot, it's like a block. And it's like, she's being blocked in so many ways right now. And she's so frustrated. And that's what's painful. So lots of pain, if Zach, if she's wants to let us know what number she's at. Karen, you have so much, like when my dad was in the hospital and he was intubated and was like paralyzed for almost a year, they were very concerned about blood clots in the legs because they can travel, right? Is that the main concern?
Yeah, it's just stasis. And interestingly, right, we know the heart that pumps, we're used to thinking of the heart as pumping blood, right? So it plays an integral part of the circulation of blood. But the heart also pumps energetic information about the essence of us. And if there's a disconnect to the true essence, the authentic part of you that shows up in all of our roles, right? You put on a hat and you talk to your mom, you put on a different hat of characters and qualities to talk to your friends. So there can be some blurring and disconnect of the essence of you. Then that message is also what the heart is sending out to every organ, endocrine, and body part is this information field of the truth of your essence. And so we're just observing that to kind of collapse the potential of the heart transmitting a brighter signal of expression of the essence of you that is unaffected by the pressure that the external world is putting on you and the collective to think intellectually, to think and utilize information about how we already think things happen and utilize new information, new discoveries that are more aligned with the truth of who you really are.
Because I can
be captured in a word.
With her, like when I just get in touch with her pain in her leg, in her left leg, and I don't even address it, like as if it's a pain. The word that comes to me is emotional. Like she is emotionally challenged right now. And I'm getting that she's challenged by something that happened in the past. And, but it's part of her, it's affecting her future. And so past, present, future, that was what the little squirrel taught me. Like I'll talk more about this next week because I got a whole story about this. It's just crazy about what I learned from a little squirrel. But the thing is that past, present, and future, if you like, it's important to learn from the past. And it's also, and we have lots of history we can learn from right now, when you say. And so the present moment, you and I here are still dealing with the past and we're dealing with our future. But what I'm noticing is there seems to be somewhat of a division in humanity at this time. And it's so weird because it used to be we were encouraged to fight about the what I call the number one deception, which is the fight that men and women have against each other. Now that pretty much, when you get men and women fighting against each other, like you've got a big division there, right? So right there, if you take that one out, well, now we've got a division of, people that think you should isolate and people who don't, and people think that you should wear masks and people who don't. And when humanity gets to the point where we can't be kind with each other, and it's hard to be kind when you're scared, like when you're really afraid. And that's what's coming up for her. It's kind of like anytime that a person has an issue with the legs, it's usually a mobility thing about moving forward. And I have had 5 different clients talk to me about restless leg syndrome this week. So restless leg syndrome, what would you say, like, because this is coming in for her too. It's about wanting to make a move, but it being stuck. Like everybody's kind of just stuck here right now. We're all sort of sitting. And
well, it's like an internal conflict in the neurological system that there's an aspect that wants to move forward and an aspect that's holding back. And then conflict with each other so that we get this sort of chaotic, restless feeling that can be expressed in many different ways.
So with people are experiencing that in their lower limbs, from your experience having been, in that hospital environment so much, is it better to move when you feel that way, or is it better to lay there?
It's a great question. And my 28 years tells me that actual best thing for each person is individual to that person. Some people need to get moving. Some people need to rest. Some people need to be emote and express. Other people's need to do less. And really the power lies in connecting to your own inner wisdom to accentuate that being the rudder that guides you, which means as unique as our fingerprints are, the interventions that support us to experience health and wellness and homeostasis and no more symptoms is as unique to the fingerprint of the person.
Okay, that's beautiful, because it is not like the people that come to me. I've worked with doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists, and they can't say that they've worked with me really because they get, in trouble. But that's okay. I've learned a lot from like I'm willing to learn from everyone and anyone. I'm a Sag. I like to learn stuff. That's my thing. Like that, take away travel and take away knowledge. And, like right now, my saving grace is that I've stumbled and see, people will say stumbled upon. I never stumble upon anything these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I asked it. I attract it. I ask the universe for specific things. And I know if it doesn't work out the way that I expect it to, that is not the way. And honest to God, I do not have the same fear of death that other people have, maybe, because I've already faced it. Like when I was thinking about this in an average person's life, I bet you we don't even realize, and we have no clue how many times we almost died.
It's so true.
I'm telling you. I know.
And we also, like, medicine, in my opinion, sees death as always a mistake, right?
Yeah. But like, I've never met energetically anyone who died that wasn't supposed to. And like in all the movies, people that get murdered and everything, they always are like trying to find their way back and like all that. And that's not true. That has not been my experience. When I connect with others that have crossed the veil, which they like to do with me because I hear them and then I can tell other people what they're saying. They are not saying, the people I'm connecting with are saying that on some level I attracted this. And when they come in, they want this energetic weakness eliminated from their ancestors, from their descendants. A lot of times I'll get cooperation. I have a client that I worked with for some time. And as I said, my squirrel passed at the same time as her father. And my dad was already on it a week before because this guy was going to the hospital to have a surgery. And my dad said, if he's a really good friend, his friend was taking him because of the pandemic. And he said, if he's a really good friend, he'll take him fishing instead.
Yeah. I love that idea that some people pass because they can enact more change from the other side of the veil. Yeah. Which is pretty much what you're saying. And I love that. That feels so lightning. I don't know what the word is. So empowering. Feels so true for someone. I've experienced, so much exposure to death on so many different reasons, right? Like every person I came across in the trauma unit, in my mind, it shouldn't have happened.
Like it feels a failure, or if like my client doesn't get something that they wanted or whatever. If you start going down that path and you start playing God, I don't have that power. I don't want that power. I have God within. Yeah. I can go.
And how about giving that reverence and honor that there's a greater intelligence, that is at work all the time. And some people say that's woo-woo and that's crazy and that's magical. I have been told more that I have magical thinking in the last 4 months than ever in my life. And I'm like, you know what? What's magic? Magic means we don't yet understand it. And I have a reverence and honor for that.
I was just watching a conversation. I can't remember, it was the Convergence or something. And Nassim Haramein was talking about his latest paper, which is talking about the perfect order all the way from the smallest particle of the quantum, like the smallest particles, all the way out to the biggest particles, and mathematically all of it in alignment, and proving that there's all this perfect order. And at the same time, all these people, there was about 12 of them on there, and they were all struggling to try and get Zoom to work. And I just thought it was so beautiful and it's so perfect. Like, this is how humanity is.
In the seeming chaos, there is order in the seeming chaos. And is that just because our logical mind has not yet been trained to simultaneously accept and receive and honor multiple truths at one time? That might even be not right or not simplified, but it's like there's this element that it needs to be right or wrong, where it's both at the same time.
I don't know. I'm just compelled to show you my favorite poster here because we've got 1 minute, and I think it's going to sum it right up here. Just hold on a second.
I love it. I love your posters.
Grab it off of here. This is one of my favorites.
Ideas are sexy too.
I'm always reminded that being smart is sexy. So I want to thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Colette. Always so much fun.
Thank you for being on the show, and thank you, Pat. Thank you for co-hosting. And I listen every Wednesday, and I just love being the one that gets to listen. So I want to thank Pat and all her team for giving us this wonderful opportunity to talk like this. And Zach, thank you for looking after this show for us and looking after us every week. Thank you to the audience. Thank you, Trish, for calling in. Bye for now, everyone. See you next Wednesday. Or Karen will see you next Wednesday, and I'll see you the Wednesday after.
Thank you so much, Colette. Such an honor to work with you.
You've been listening to The Truth is Funny with Colette Stefan. Tune in to The Truth is Funny with Colette Stefan each Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Join Colette on the Higher Self Network as she provides energetic shifts and consistent results in every area of life, inspiring listeners to shine their brilliance and ensure success.